Hi, yeah, so welcome to chapter on pine. And I'm gonna make a pine resin salve. So originally I really wanted to collect all of the resin myself. So like pine trees secrete the resin when they're injured, and then, you know, they let it out to like cover it. And if there's extra, you can like carefully take some and put it in a jar. I did not find any, and what I did find, this is kind of like molding, so I don't really want to touch it, but what I did find is basically like there was such a little amount of resin on the bark that I had to like take off a piece of bark to get any of the resin, and like I didn't want to hurt the tree, so I didn't do that. I found like actually 5 different trees that had the resin leaking from them, but it was like really thin. And also I was using Douglas firs because there aren't actually any white pines in British Columbia. Well, there are in British Columbia, but not in Vancouver. So yeah, I kept looking up white pines, are they in BC, and I would see them like generally over Vancouver, but they're in the islands and the interior, but not anywhere near me, which is kind of ironic because there is like a popular local beach named White Pine Beach, which was the first place I went to try to find white pines. I thought I could go there, take photos, perhaps collect some resin, but after walking around the park a little bit, we noticed there was no white pines. So I kept searching for white pines, the elusive white pine, and after going home and doing some Googling, I realized that there actually isn't any in Vancouver. But you can make salve with a lot of the resin from different conifer trees, and the most common here in Vancouver to find are the Douglas fir. So I thought that I could harvest like a little bit of resin going for some hikes, but honestly what I found was just there wasn't enough to harvest and for it to actually be like ethical. So what I did was I searched around the internet for a little bit, and I found that there was an apothecary on Etsy that actually sells the pine resin. So I got spruce resin and lodgepole pine resin. So I'm excited to see how this works. In the video that I'm watching, their resin is like very wet, and this is like crystals almost. I mean, there's a lot of like twigs, and you can see like bugs in it. So like it's good that it's like not refined. It's supposed to be like wild crafted pine resin. So let's see how that works. So yeah, I'm gonna be using these ones that I bought on Etsy for this experiment. But I actually go hiking quite a bit in the local mountains, so I'm just gonna continue to bring a little jar with me, and then if I ever come across a tree that has a lot of resin and it's like ethical and responsible to harvest, then I'll take a little bit. But you don't want to take all of the resin and then leave the tree without anything. And if you harm the bark of the tree, it can get an infection or disease and die. Like you could actually really damage the tree, or, you know, harm its like its health. So yeah, white pine was, I thought it was going to be easy. I was like, okay, there are conifer trees everywhere, evergreen trees everywhere. I'll do a project on pine. So simple, right? But I went all over the place searching for white pine. I did actually eventually find the white pine, but I had to go to UBC. It's like a university here, and they have like a couple nice botanical gardens, and they have one that has like a section with white pine. So I went there to go and like see different white pine trees, but the ones that were there's one that had something called blister rust, so it was like really like orange and like was losing a lot of its like needles, like its pine needles. The other one was like just a baby, so like I couldn't even like take a nice photo of it or like really get to see it. It was like this big. The other one was fairly large and like healthier, but it was amongst like a bunch of other trees. And like I was mostly there to take photographs for painting, so didn't quite work out the best. I didn't take the best photos, but I still actually got to see a white pine. If I ever take a trip down to the islands or the interior, then I will definitely keep my eyes out to actually see, my eyes open to actually see if I can find a white pine. Okay, so I put some coconut oil in here. On the video that I'm watching from my school, they say about the amount of resin as the amount of oil. I would use olive oil, but I don't have any, so that would probably be a more economical option. So Brian, my teacher in the video, starts to heat the oil. But he doesn't get it like boiling or super hot, just enough to warm it. And then once the oil is warm, he's scraping his out of a mason jar that he collected it in. But his looks very wet and sticky, whereas mine is really dry. So he also has about a pint, like he has one of these things full of, I'm watching the video right now, he has one of these things full of the pine resin. So got these little packages and they're almost like crystally, so I hope this is gonna work. To be honest, I'm feeling a little bit uncertain because his is a lot wetter in texture than what I've ordered. Okay, so my oil is starting to melt. Here's what we got going on. Melted coconut oil and resin. And I didn't pick up cheesecloth, so I'm just gonna use this old cloth. It's clean. And I have a sieve underneath it. And then another container that the oil is gonna drip into. So get my phone out of the way. Just gonna pour this through here, and then all of those nasty little buggy bits will be gone. This is what I ended up with. It's like deep orange color. Now I take that strained oil and I'm gonna add my beeswax. Here's my beeswax, and on the video he said if it's a little bit too thin, add more oil. If it gets too thick, add more of the wax flakes. And it's kind of just for whatever your preference. So if you have like a burn and the skin is really sore, you might not want like a thicker, waxier kind of salve. If you're traveling somewhere warm and you know it's going to be in your backpack, maybe you want something with more wax. So it kind of just depends on what you're actually going to use it for. So I'm just going to sprinkle some of the beeswax into my resin. So I got it here. All right. It kind of looks like tomato soup. I'm just gonna let that melt and then test the consistency by taking a little bit of it and putting it into the freezer and seeing how that works out. So after the freezer test, it was still like a little bit too soft. So I just added like a few more pieces of the beeswax, and yeah, it's looking pretty good. As I was watching on the video, they said that this pine salve is used for like burns and cuts and scrapes and things, so you don't want it to be too thick and waxy. So I think mine's turning out a little bit on the oily side. It was a little bit heavy with the oil in the beginning. But yeah, I've added a little bit more wax, and I think it's going to turn out to be a pretty good texture. The jars that you want to put it in, don't make them like super tall and skinny, or else you're not going to be able to get to the bottom, and then you're going to waste stuff. So going for a nice like wider, shorter jar is a good idea. Yeah, it's all mixed together now, and I think this is actually going to be really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and start to can up. Well, I guess can up. I'm going to put it in jars. I'm going to divide it up, portion it. So here it is, the finished resin. Here's what my salve looks like. I'm actually really excited that this isn't a total waste, because my expectations were like on the floor. I was not thrilled with how the product looked when I bought it, like the resin. So all right, so there is our nice melted beautiful salve. It smells like a campfire, like it's really rich. It's like it's subtle but kind of overpowering at the same time. Ooh. So I'm just gonna fill these guys up, and I'm gonna give them to my family members and ask them to use it. And see what they think. Oh my goodness, this honestly, the smell is just so beautiful. Like it smells like camping in like the most beautiful, like buttery way. Like it's just like a buttery campfire smell. It's just so fucking gorgeous. I would make this just for the smell. Yeah, it's like a buttery tree smell. It's so delicious. Sweet. Well, I will check in and show you what this looks like after it hardens. Yay.